Hey, I'm J.R. Lay. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Business Podcast. You know, there is a lot of change going on in the world right now, and it can be easy to fall into the gap. It can be easy to just gripe about problems. And when we do that, we're just going to get stuck in the cave of complacency. We're going to sink into scarcity. And that's why in this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of resiliency, adaptability, and the role an abundant mindset plays to navigate the challenges and complexity of not just change, but sometimes what we're experiencing right now, exponential change. But first, I'd like to invite you to get a copy of my best-selling book, Banking on Change. It is the leader's guide to achieving exponential growth in the age of AI. Text me 832-240-1922, and I will text you back a copy so that you can level up your mind, you can level up your marketing, you can level up your sales so that you can level up your business and your life. Now, joining me for today's conversation is Jeremey Newberg. Jeremey is the CEO of Capital Access, who is in fact navigating change right now in his business as an entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Jeremey.
Absolute pleasure to be with you.
I am so glad that you are here because there's a lot that we can talk through today. And before we get into navigating change and the role that abundance and an abundant mindset plays, resiliency, adaptability, what is going well for you? What is good in your life right now, personally or professionally? It's your pick to get started.
Sure. In October of 2023, I made the investment in the Entrepreneur's Operating System. And it was in response to me recognizing that I needed to change from a grumpy grinder to a fantastic facilitator. And I like to play with alliteration, but it's, as Dan Sullivan would say, it's the transition from the manager to a leader. We needed that for the company to grow. And my ego is such that I'm very happy hiring people that are smarter and more capable than me. It's an honor. And so we invested, my deputy became the integrator. I got better at being the visionary. My mission is to be a facilitator of learning, relationships, innovation, and new business. And I try with great intention to be the buyer in cultivating relationships. I had to learn that. I had to practice it. I view it like a muscle. You train for it.
I want to pause. I want to pause you there because this idea of relationship, it sounds like it didn't come natural. You had to learn it. You had to train for it. You had to build the muscle around it. It's funny because I had to do the same exact thing. That's why I wanted to pause you on this. It's something that I think we're going to have to get even better at as we move further into the age of AI, when artificial intelligence has the potential to surpass quote unquote human intelligence. But here's the good news, I believe, is we have other intelligences. We have the emotional intelligence. We have relationship intelligence. Roll back, because you mentioned that you invested in EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. You transformed from being a grumpy grinder to a fantastic facilitator, and you're in great company too. I love alliteration, which is why I can remember these things that you're sharing. Exactly. If you didn't use alliteration, I'd be like, what did he say 5 minutes ago? Because I don't remember, but no, it's communication here. Yeah. Let's talk about relationship and relationship development, because this was something that you had to change, it sounds like, in yourself to be even better. What happened?
Yeah, in many ways, unless you're ridiculously brilliant and driven, the entrepreneur's journey is as much a personal journey as a professional journey. So you have to be comfortable in your own skin. And I submit to you, the more comfortable you are in your own skin, the better you will be at listening and building confidence and trust. And I've been in strategic coach I'm in my third year now. And what I started to do last year was reread the core materials. Mm-hmm. And I went deep on dangers, opportunities, and strengths.
Yes.
It resonated. And so now when I meet a prospect, I really want to know, what are the dangers, the risks that you want to mitigate? I want to understand the opportunities that we can capture and the strengths that we can leverage. And by doing that, it's just a massive expression of respect and listening. I want uh, and I apologize for dropping names here, but Joe Polish's easy, lucrative, and fun
Oh,
really resonates with me. And sometimes you take on a job because you want to learn and grow, um, but it may be a hard, annoying, and lame and frustrating client experience. And so we've gotten more disciplined at what is the success criteria to be the buyer in building those relationships. A lot of listening, a lot of listening. But it was also that personal growth that really started as far back as 2021 when I was working with Ben Hardy in the AMP and AMP Platinum program. In many ways, the AMP program was as much a personal journey as professional. And then when I signed up for Strategic Coach, more tools for the entrepreneur. And now EOS is more tools for the company.
yeah. Your point, and by the way, you mentioned alliteration, and then we're rolling straight into acronyms with ELF and HAF and DOS, all great perspectives. But there's another perspective that you're sharing that I don't think that we can overlook. You mentioned something so key about an entrepreneur being comfortable in their own skin. I can tell you that wasn't always my case. I was actually very uncomfortable in my own skin. I couldn't put a finger on it. I didn't know what it was or why it was, and it was like I was searching. But what I found is whenever I started to, I had business success, but I was struggling personally, and that you connected these two dots of the personal and the professional. Where's that intersection, and how has that intersection allowed you to do what you've been able to do and really navigate a lot of the changes that you're experiencing today within your own business? Because we can always look back and say, well, what if I hadn't made that investment in myself? What if I hadn't made the investment thinking about EOS in my team, in my company, in my organization? Where would we be today? Roll us back when you think about the intersection of the personal and the professional here.
When I turned 50, I got frustrated. My revenues were stagnating. The company really wasn't growing. And our pattern was whenever there was a disaster, we were really good at mobilizing to capture recovery or relief money. So we helped raise $250 million for the state of Michigan during the foreclosure crisis. In Michigan, the foreclosures were tax, not bank loans. Okay, market failure. We put a consortium of the state, 12 cities, 8 land banks. We did 4,000 demolitions, 1,000 housing units at large scale. We did a $300 million buyout and relocation program during Superstorm Sandy. We did a $300 million small business grant and loan program after Hurricane Maria for the government in Puerto Rico. So we gear up, we build the platform, we're successful, we spend the money, and then I have to break the platform down again.
Huh.
And that up and down was a total downer, total bummer, total bummer. I'm like, why can't I grow in a sustainable upswing? And so I needed more tools to figure out how to redeploy the product. So it's strategy, systems, staff to get to scale. There's another alliteration, but I'm living it. And so the entry point for me was when I heard an interview of Ben Hardy when he wrote, Willpower Doesn't Work.
Yes.
And that was an early book. I don't know if Ben probably wants to rewrite it, if from his quality standards. But the message of the book was you need to create the environment for you to be successful. And if you're just relying on will and grinding it out, you'll get fatigued. So how do you create your environment, which could be external, but it's also personal? Okay. And do it with insight and love rather than shame. That was the key thing for me because people beat themselves up. And in mindfulness, the monkey mind, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
somehow we're wired in modern day society to default to what's lacking, the scarcity mindset, rather than the abundance mindset. I
Yeah.
had to learn the abundance mindset to be more comfortable in my own skin.
Oh my goodness, Jeremy. You're talking about this revenue roller coaster. And once again, I've been there. I know what it feels like. You talk about being frustrated at 50. That was frustrated at 40 for me. And I even think my wife, she verbally told me, she goes, I'm tired of the roller coaster, the ups, the downs. One of the topics that we recently unpacked on the podcast was around what Lisa Smith calls the deserve level.
Healthy
And
deserve level. Yeah, great
you hit
book.
that level and then you go back down and you up and down and up. And so when you're talking about coming back to Ben's book, Willpower Doesn't Work, that was a transformative book myself because it's like you push, you fight, you grind. And someone called me out within the last year and they're like, you're a fighter. You've been fighting your entire life. And maybe you're just not doing the right thing in the right industry, which is the whole reason that I had the courage to launch Level Up Business. And I can tell you the flow that I have felt from this to what I was trying to force with my other business. It is a true night and day. And I think too, it's also what Dan talks about over at Strategic Coach. It's unique ability.
Mhm.
It's getting really clear as to what is it that gives you energy, that excites you, that you could do for the next 25 years, because we think about that 25-year future coming out of Coach. What is it that for what is that for you? What is the thing that just energizes you most, that I would say connects back to your point of something that you've had to learn, like I've had to learn, silence the monkey mind to develop an abundance mindset? Because for me it was not a natural state of being. I was stuck in the fear, the scarcity, the shame. If we think about Dr. David Hawkins' scale or map of human consciousness, I was in a survival paradigm. How did you break free from that to shift into abundance?
So through AMP and AMP Platinum, and with all the weekly coaching, I learned how to craft a vision of my future self. I
Mm.
allowed myself to do that. And my vision of my future self is to be a strong, lean, loving, prosperous man. And a funny joke, that's a 5 count, right? Strong, lean, loving, prosperous man. I use that 5 count to train to do 21 pull ups nonstop. I just
Wow.
kept repeating it. So it's like training your mind. And that became the purpose. Uh, and with that, you then learn how to define your big three for your purpose for whatever you want to 10x.
Yeah.
And for me, it was freedom to prosper, freedom to be fit and healthy, freedom to live each day with focus, flow, and ease. So, when the why is clear, the hows emerge. That sounds good, but to actually apply it takes work.
Right.
And
Yes.
so I learned the daily deliberate practices that help me. And so, um, the messages of Brian Tracy and BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits, even Atomic Habits, they're good. They're somewhat overwhelming books,
Yeah.
ironically, right?
Right.
Tiny Habits is thick.
Yes.
But that daily deliberate practice of what are your annual goals, what are your quarterly, what are your monthly, and then learning how to make a goal smart, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time bound.
Mhm.
That's the practice. And then that journaling of what are your 3 wins, even if all I did was get up in the morning and brush my teeth, it's a win. but
Yeah.
and then learning how to apply the gratitude of it all because we don't know when our time is up. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself and I reframed the goal to enjoy the journey as much as I can because I don't know when my time is up. And so that opened things up for me. So it's these big goals, clarity of purpose, and then what are the daily deliberate practices to just check in and see the progress. I need to see daily progress. And
Mm,
so I had to do that work first. And now what I've been doing is raising the standards with my company.
yeah. This is something I wrote about in Banking on Change, that when we're wanting to grow as an organization, I think sometimes we try to grow from the outside in, where what you're unpacking and sharing here is you're growing from the inside out, meaning that you had, as the entrepreneur, you had to transform yourself first and foremost.
Right.
Get clear about, and the permission, I think you used the word permission. Give yourself the permission. It's like what Dan has talks about over at Coach, wanting what you want. I want it because I want it. And I know that Dan has created and kept this journal of the things that he has wanted for decades at this point. And I started to do the same myself and not give it any other justification. I just want it because I want it, and give myself the permission to want. And then the follow up to that is, once you get that, call it the individual transformation, working on the self, you transform the self to then transform the team.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're gifting your experience to those around you. So you're leveling them up. And then when you transform the team or teams, which are made up of individuals, that's when you transform the organization, take the organization to an entirely new level of possibility. When you shifted from the self and the abundance that you were seeing, and I think the point of gratitude cannot be overstated, nor can the time that we have. One of our values here, one of our tenets, is two words, Latin, memento mori. Remember your death. We
Right.
don't know how much we have left. And so for me, I want more memento mori moments so that I am in congruence with where I feel, at least from my own perception, of being called to a higher purpose, the future self, back to Ben Hardy. Quick break from my conversation with Jeremey, because I'd like to invite you to text me, 832-240-1922. Text me right now, and I will text you a copy of my best-selling book, Banking on Change. It is the entrepreneur's guide to unlocking and achieving exponential growth in the age of AI. You see, inside Banking on Change, you are going to get dozens of practical strategic frameworks that I have used over the last 23 years as a B2B entrepreneur. You can use these same frameworks starting today so that you can level up your mind, marketing, and sales. So most importantly, you can level up your business and your life. Let's get back to the conversation with Jeremey. How has it been received to shift from the abundance of the self to then bring that into the team and then to level the organization up? What has that journey been like for you?
Humbling. For like in 2024, we took on two new jobs, managing about 50 million in home repair funds. We really didn't have the staff. We didn't have the systems. We didn't have the policies and procedures in place. It took me 6 months to figure out just how to properly staff it, and then another 6 months to get the systems in place. And now we're hitting our production numbers. And that year was painful, but I
Yeah,
knew it was what we had to do to make those investments, to build our qualifications, as Dan Sullivan would say, our capabilities.
right.
So this whole idea of what's your unique process so that you're not a commodity, you're adding unique value. I had to really work with that. And we are on track to make that happen. The second big principle was through EOS. Does the staff get it, want it, and have the capacity to excel? Because in my business, housing and community development, we can attract some wounded healers. And so, in service to the mission, there might be mismanagement of time or kind of plateauing at capability.
Right.
And they're good people. They're nice, decent, lovely people, but they're not growing with us.
Right.
And so the raising of standards has to happen. And so some people quit, some people we let go. There may be some people that may plateau, and that may happen again. I'm not doing it out of any cruelty or an attitude. We're better at saying, this is what we need from the position. This is what we need from you. We've given you 6 months to a year. You're struggling. Is this the right place for you? You know?
And coming back to the EOS tool, GWC, having and to use your words as a facilitator, and you mentioned learning as one of those areas of focus for you. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? And you give the tools, you give the coaching, you give the education, you give the training, you give the love. But as my shirt says, which is another one of our tenets, our values over here, it's to pursue excellence. It is the pursuit. Someone stopped me in the elevator one day. I was speaking at a conference doing a keynote, and they were like, "I like your shirt." I said, "Well, thank you very much." They go, "I try every day to pursue excellence, but I always feel like I fail." I go, "Well, then you're pursuing excellence." Then you're pursuing it.
Right.
I never said to pursue perfection. I said you're pursuing excellence. You're always striving to level up. You're always striving to see how far you can go. And I think back to your team here and the way that you're articulating this, it reminds me of the African proverb of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
It's beautiful. It's good. Really good. Really good.
So you've been developing this abundance mindset yourself. You've been bringing this to the team. You have standards. You're pursuing excellence together. If you think back, what's been the biggest challenge, the biggest roadblock, the biggest obstacle that might have historically have looked like an obstacle, coming back to the frustrated 50s or being a frustrated 50-year-old, that now an obstacle is nothing more than an opportunity because it's the way you're looking at it. Your perception has shifted from scarcity to abundance.
There's a certain power in thoughtfully reframing. Because if you thoughtfully reframe, it's the gut check. And like with Strategic Coach, the impact filter is a very good tool to figure out what's the purpose and what does done look like, what does success look like. But the strategy circle is like the implementation tool. I'm just learning how to use that because I found it initially to be way oversimplified. There is much more to this. What's up? So last year, our theme was get our house in order. This year, our theme is to achieve excellence in production. And I want to share something with you with our case managers who are most vulnerable to being like drawn into some of the drama of the homeowners, which is understandable. Mm-hmm. I said, this year with our tools, I want you to transition from a processor to a system operator. Do you understand what that means?
I was say, can you unpack the difference between the two?
One is responsive and one is proactive. Okay. And so even though someone may call, you've got to do the data entry in our system so that our inspectors can go out, so that our estimator can do an estimate, so we can do a bid package, so we can do a notice to start construction. You're part of a production system. If your data is not up to date, our system isn't up to date, we make our profit in the efficiency and flow. But if you're on the phone all the time, even though you want to help people, can you say, hi, it's 10 o'clock. My time is committed until noon. Can we talk at 2?
Yes.
It sounds basic, but oh my, we're drilling on that.
Well, there's something else that I would say, it sounds basic, but it is an oh my that I want to roll back to, is the way that you communicated this. You're doing this so that X, so that Y, so that Z. Because there's meaning in the system.
Yes.
There's a interconnectedness throughout it all, because if there's not the meaning, it's very hard to connect the emotion to that. Well, and then we're getting into the existential crisis of what am I doing? Why am I here? Even at the microcosm of the process. But when you're able to connect those dots, and number one, and then number two, effectively communicate and then recommunicate that, that is where a rising tide begins to lift all ships.
Right. That's right.
And it comes back to almost how we've started our conversation today. It's relationship.
It's relationship, yes. And I really learned this from Chad Willardson. Have your processes written down, even though you may need to update them, because you can't keep it all in your head, and you want to delegate. Chad is like, today I'm in Hawaii, today I'm in Belize. He's like this kind of groovy world traveler vibe that he gives off, but he's smart as a tack, and he understands systems. So the relationships with the clarity of the purpose, with the system, and it is raising your healthy deserve level, because a lot of people don't think that they can operate at a higher level. I end up recommending people to read Gay Hendricks' The Big Leap, because that book is about recognizing where you have self-limiting behaviors.
Yes.
And for younger people, the Cal Newport Be So Good They Can't Ignore You is more accessible. I really think people in their early and mid 20s absolutely suffered from COVID. And they need to learn how to organize their time. They missed out on the socialization because they were essentially isolated for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I go out of my way to work with the younger staff. And I go out of my way when there's a wayward person trying to find themselves. But then I challenge them hard.
Yes.
I'm like, well, what do you want to be the best at? And they're like, yo, excuse me. I didn't know I could ask myself that question.
As we start to wrap up here, Jeremy, you mentioned this idea of being the best. It's one of our North Stars here. It's another acronym, which is why I wanted to pause you on that point. Because being the best, and I appreciate your humility. You can still strive to be the best at something while retaining humility. Because being the best is an acronym that stands for taking something and making it better. It's essentially going from good to great. Mm-hmm. The E is looking for the efficiencies within that. The S is how can I systematize and make this scalable?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then the T is teachable. Mm-hmm. How can I teach this to someone else so that they can continue to elevate, so that they can continue to level up? Because what I found, and a lot of this does play in a unique ability. It's like, what I am not the best at, that's someone else. They're going to be the best at that. And I want to do everything possible to make sure that they are prepared to be the best and to be better efficient, systematized and scalable, and ultimately teachable. As we wrap up, Jeremey, we've covered so many wonderful tools. You mentioned books, Willpower Doesn't Work, The Big Leap. You talk about the self-limiting beliefs here. I'll throw another one in. The Mountain Is You is another great book on this subject.
Good stuff.
What would you recommend to a fellow entrepreneur who has made it this far in our conversation, that is still watching, they're still listening? Something that they can do, some action they can take that is small for them to continue to develop themselves, probably first personally, and then use that personal development, self-development to expand as an entrepreneur with their team, with their organization, develop that abundance that we've been talking about here today. What would be the one thing they can do next?
Recognize and appreciate that a feeling is a message. It's almost divine. So if you're feeling frustrated and grumpy, sit with it and ask yourself, what's the source? Where's it coming from? Because we're all moving so quickly. Multitasking is completely overrated. We have algorithms that fight for our attention. We talk about mindfulness, but to actually practice it, you just got to sit or go for a walk. And so if you're feeling frustrated or stuck, use the journal to list out everything that is a hindrance, and then see what you can do to reframe that and see what insights you find.
That is a really great perspective. Do you mind if I add to that?
Sure, please.
Because that's where I found myself in 2023 and 2024. The frustration, the resistance, the fighting, the feeling stuck. And I did not have the awareness at the time to just sit with it and to be and to feel. But what I did have, and what I am so grateful for, is to be in groups like Coach, like Elevated, like Genius Network, these communities with other entrepreneurs who have most likely been where I was. And if you're watching, listening, there are groups, there are communities. You do not have to do this alone. And that's where the accountability comes into play, so that you can gain some perspective, because so easy you can feel like you're just trapped in the bottle and you can't read the label from the outside. And Jeremey, back to your point, that practice of just journaling and feeling, to slow down, to pause, to review, to reflect, is something that we cannot overstate. So thank you for bringing that to light.
It's a pleasure. And the podcasts that you've produced that I've watched, what you're doing is, there are some big thinkers out there, right? And big writers. But what you're doing is, you're like, how do we apply this? Mm-hmm. That to me is part of what I'm seeing as your unique ability. And that's why it was a pleasure to be invited and participate on your podcast. So thank you.
Well, Jeremey, thank you. And if someone wants to continue the conversation that we have started here today, what is the best way for them to reach out, connect, say hello to?
Our website, www.capital, CAPITAL, access, ACCESSINC, capitalaccessinc.com.
Connect with Jeremey, learn with Jeremey, level up and grow with Jeremey. Jeremey, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Level Up Business Podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you want to continue to level up on your journey of growth as a B2B entrepreneur, I invite you to text me 832-240-1922 to get a copy of Banking on Change. It is the entrepreneurial's guide to unlock exponential growth in the age of AI. And as we've talked about here today, you do not have to take this journey alone.